Hello and welcome to the Hockey Hub Podcast, episode number 47. Glad you could join us. Adam Pellerin and George Balekji. What's up, man?
Brother, always good to be on this pod with you. You know, I appreciate you being the gracious host. You take the Hockey Hub, Bruins focus, NHL focus. You welcome in the college hockey crowd. So I'm always stoked to talk about the matchup we have in the tournament. Like this hockey's tournament coming up, it's going to be phenomenal. So I can't wait to talk about it with you, Adam. And I know we have some great guests coming up on the show too.
Yeah, we do. Eric Gallanty, who does play-by-play. Natalie Noury, who does ringside. Both Hockey East experts. They will be joining us as we gear up for the semifinal round at TD Garden. It's the 40th edition of the Hockey East tournament, and you can catch all of the action on our NESN channels. You got Thursday's action on NESN Plus, featuring Maine and Northeastern. That's in the nightcap. Boston University and UConn will get things started. Coverage begins Thursday at 4 on NESN Plus and NESN 360. And on Friday, check out the Men's Hockey East Championship game. That's at 7:30 on NESN Plus and NESN 360. And so that sets the stage for a quick discussion before we get to our guest, George. I just got to start here. Who saw Northeastern beating Boston College coming? My goodness, can you believe that the Huskies were able to upset the Eagles?
I could not. Yes and no. We've seen them just consistently. I mean, they're the kings of the beanpot, except for this past year. BU won. But like they have gone where they're chasing three-peats. They're chasing to win. They've won 5 of the last 7. So in those one-off tournaments, they play so well. And this is a team, when you look at them individually, you know how good they are. And that's not a way of they aren't playing as a team. They've just been so up and down at them. But when you look at how good a Jack Williams is, how good a Cameron Lund is, a Dylan Ritz-Kovian, who's just a sophomore, but feels like he is a third, fourth-year player with the amount of experience he has, Vinny Borghese, Cam Whitehead, when he hits his ceiling, how good of a goalie, you understand it. But you still couldn't believe it. Where BC, just deep. NHL guys all over. Absolute studs. They should still be the favorites to win it all. But that's a beauty of the single elimination. And if you told me, Adam, BC will get upset at home in the quarterfinals of the Hockey East by a team, but you won't expect it, who would it be? I would say Northeastern, because they can just show up and they just play. Not in the bad way of dirty. They just play dirty hockey. They blocked 20 shots. They forechecked the heck out of the Eagles. That's how they play. So, yes, I was surprised, but I wasn't shocked, if that makes sense. This is on par for the style that Northeastern plays. They don't care who you are. They don't care. They're never spoken about in the conversations. They're going to show up and play. And you know what? In a way, it's like poetic. They're wearing the all-black jerseys, opponent's funeral, because Northeastern is walking into their rink, their barn. They're going to take them down. It was awesome.
It's never happened before. Number 9 seed reaching a semifinal round, and Northeastern able to do that under Jerry Keefe. And so Northeastern will be taking on a very good Maine team that's looking to win their first Hockey East tournament crown since 2004. The reemergence of Maine under Ben Barr. We're going to get into that conversation, but this just seems to be sort of a well-rounded, maybe the most well-rounded team left in the tournament.
Yeah, I agree. You look at them, like what Maine has been all year long, and it starts in the net with Albin Boya, second-year player for them. And he's basically top 5 in goals against, save percentage, everything that you want to map out. 4th in the nation, 1.75 goals against, and the .930 save percentage. But also, this is a guy that's played every game in them for the Hockey East. And his goals against is a Best Buy goaltender that's played 23 or more games in the conference since 2004. He's having an historic year. But the guys in front of him, like a Taylor McCarr that transferred over from UMass, so played in this tournament last year with UMass Amherst, is now a leader. One of the 2 leaders in goals scored with Harrison Scott for Maine. Then you have Renwick, Russell, how deep their blue line is. Adam, when you look at their 5 starting skaters on the ice, the ages for them, 24, 24, 21, 24, 22. Ben Barr in year 2 leading the Maine Black Bears, he knows what he's doing. He knows what he wants to do and how to play and the type of players he brings in. You're going to see a lot of forechecking. You're going to see a lot of physical play, but it's not going to be boring hockey. They're not going to slow the game down. They are just going to keep you out of the middle. They're going to keep you along the boards. They are going to tire you out, beat you down, and then they have the guys, both on the front and on the blue line of their ice, that can score a ton. Because when you look at it from a standpoint of how good Harrison Scott is, and he's been playing, but also that they have Brandon Holt with 20 points. Frank Dursevic, 27 points. For a blue liner, that's a highest scoring guy in Maine in 10 years for him to achieve that. This Maine team is so damn deep. It is insane. And it's not like they're protecting a goalie. They have a really good goalie when the opportunities come his way, but they don't make it easy on you. And that's what makes him so dangerous in this format and this tournament.
Yeah, I watched Alvin Boya in our Hockey East Whip Around show last Saturday at the Mullins Center. Made some unbelievable saves against UMass. You get the other matchup, BU, UConn. We all know BU very well, obviously, with their star power. They were able to beat UMass in overtime to advance to the semifinal round. Cole Eiserman doing the honors, his 21st goal of the year. And then you got UConn with a hard-fought, come-from-behind win down in Stores, 3-1 over Providence. This is going to be a fun matchup as well. You talk about BU and all their offense, but Mike Yeageroff, the goalie, who he got in late January, has been a big difference maker for them.
Yeah, he's been. This is the cliche. He's the X factor. He's that addition that puts his team over the top. Cole Eiserman scored the overtime game-winning goal. He's going to be an NHL player. Cole Hutson, Quinn Hutson, Shane LaChance. Those are guys that are going to be NHL players, and some of them are already drafted. But Mike Yeageroff, and the recap Adam on his story, he was playing for the Omaha Lancers. He was already committed to play with BU next season, but Omaha was the most toxic environment for any hockey player to be in, and it's all out of Yeageroff's control. They fired their head coach, their interim head coach, and their goalie coach. Jay Pandolfo got on the phone with the Devils who drafted him, got on the phone with Yeageroff's agent. What's best for his development is bring him into BU now. Once he got to BU, all you have to do is be enrolled in spring classes before the semester begins. They were able to figure it out with Mike. They just pushed him basically ahead one semester. He got in net against BC, and he started every game, all 13 since that point, and he's one of the best goalies in the nation. He's put them over the top. They have the blue line, young, but led by a guy like Braden Engum, who played for UMass Lowell last year and transferred over to be in games like this. And then Yeageroff just changes the whole complexity of the team. He has been absolutely fantastic. He's one of the smartest guys, one of the just most charismatic, fun, happy-go-lucky people you meet. Because I think all of this, Adam, end of the day, he feels like he won the lottery. He was in Omaha, it wasn't going right, and now he's playing for not just he won a Bean Pot, but now a Hockey East championship possibly in the tournament and can go to a Frozen Four. He changes this team. They're really fast. They score a ton, but their goalie's really good.
Yeah, great story, and that story continues Thursday at the Garden when they take on the UConn Huskies. Again, a Huskies team doesn't have the Hockey East resume that BU. Part of the reason why is only been in Hockey East for just over a decade. They're reaching the second semifinal in Hockey East in their history in the conference. And BU, they've won 10 Hockey East tournament titles, second most to Boston College. Their last game under Jay Pandolfo in his first season back in 2023. So we got a lot of storylines to get to, and to do that and to help us do that, we have a couple of Hockey East experts joining us starting now. All right, you're watching the Hockey Hub, and if you like what you hear, then make sure to like and subscribe to the show. Hockey Hub can be found on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, and wherever else podcasts are found. Joining us now on the Hockey Hub podcast is ringside reporter Natalie Noury, covers the Boston Fleet, covers Hockey East, and we are happy to be joined by somebody who knows what they're talking about when it comes to these teams that are getting set to play in the semifinals. What's up, Natalie?
Well, I hope I know what I'm talking about. Geez, the pressure's on. But no, it's been a crazy time. It's been busy. It's been exciting. And I have to say, with the amount of years that I've been involved in Hockey East, I've said since the start of this year, I feel like this is going to be the most unpredictable championship that we are going to see. I think I was asked, I don't know, maybe a week ago, are we going to see BCBU again? And I said, you know what? I kind of feel like we're not. I think we might see one of those teams, but then it's going to be random. It's going to be scattered, and it's going to keep us on our toes. So it's been a good year, and hopefully I can provide some good insight for you guys.
Yeah, you called it. No question about that. Boston College upset by Northeastern, which is just kind of crazy to think about that, right? Because you go back to the Bean Pot, you saw what BC did to Northeastern in that semifinal game, an 8-2 win. Northeastern, you look at some of the rankings. I mean, it's not been great for Jerry Keefe's squad. However, they've played better as of late, and they played a tough game against Providence to close out the regular season. They were able to win their opening round game, and then they meet BC, and they're able to hold that high-powered offense, just one goal. What stood out to you about that win?
Yeah, I mean, that was very unpredictable, I guess, in a way. But I really like how Northeastern came into the postseason, because for them, the whole message was just, it's a new season and let's just like we were just talking about before the camera started rolling, take it one day at a time, one game at a time, and stay in the present. So I think you really have to credit Northeastern's perspective and just the way that they've been able to kind of stay in the moment and face things head on when they are challenged with them. I think Northeastern, since coming into playoffs, they kind of look like the same team, but they've just got a little more swagger. That's a term that Jerry Keefe will use often for what he sees from his team. But I feel like they came in with conviction. I think Cameron Whitehead is playing his best hockey right now. I think the D-core for the Huskies were a huge part of their success. Multiple block shots, laying their bodies out on the line to prevent anything from going in that net. But I think the real impressive part from that team was just the way that they were commanding the neutral zone, because we just kept saying Northeastern is clogging the neutral zone, and Boston College was struggling with that. They weren't able to find any time and space for their players to make plays. So I think Northeastern came in with a chip on their shoulder, maybe from the bean pot, but they came in and they said, you know what? We're going to shut down the number one team in the country, and they certainly did. And it was a lot of fun. You could really see the bench was excited. It was funny because during the intermission, I actually ran into Jerry Keefe in the hallway, and I was wearing green because it was right before St. Patrick's Day, of course. And he said, I like the green, and he pulled his pant leg up and he had green socks on as well. So he was kind of loose. He was kind of funny in the moment. And I was like, wow, this is right before a big third period. I feel like Jerry Keefe kind of seems calm, cool, and collected right now. He must have a lot of confidence in his team. So you could just see the whole demeanor was different. And I think that was part of the reason they got it done. But very exciting win. Very happy for Northeastern. Excited to see them at the Garden.
Yeah, you see the full buy-in from the team. I love how loose you hear that story from Jerry Keefe. One of the most serious, stern guys you'll see on a game day. But for him to go, hey, I'm just a thought of on a game day, all the worries you have, scouting reports, execution, the opponent. He's like, let me put on the green socks. It's almost that holiday season. But I think it's the beauty of it. And you point out, and he had to have loved what he saw from his team, the buy-in. Like Cam Whitehead had 30 saves, but in reality, there was 50 saves made because of the 20 block shots from the defense. Right. And that's something that the defense is buying in on. And it's honestly all the players on the ice. So Northeastern does what they always do. It comes tournament time. They don't care how good or how poorly they're playing. They are in this single elimination format. They're going to show up, going to play hard. And I love what they have in the matchup with Maine. This Maine squad, front to back to front, from Albin Boya in the goal to all the guys in front of them. They're deep. They're physical. Yeah. From covering this Maine team, too, which is, I love the story up in Orono, 4 hours away from Boston. Their second straight trip to the Garden for the Hockey East tournament. First time they've done this since the early 2000s. What stands out to you about that Maine team? They're deep. They're physical. They're old in the best way possible. And they're just downright nasty.
Yeah, I mean, they certainly have a lot of experience, a veteran core. And I think, like you mentioned, George, they were at the Garden last year and they were kind of stopped short from their goal, obviously. But I think, first of all, very exciting to see Maine back at the Garden because their student section is insane. They bring some of the most electric fans that can be in a hockey arena. And I'm very excited to see them at the Garden. They certainly make the game a little more exciting. But, the guys on the ice, they do a great job too. And like you mentioned, the veteran players that they have, Boya, he's made some incredible saves throughout the year. He just shows why he can keep this team in the game. Every player has proven themselves. It took a little while for Josh Nadeau to get things going, but he did. And I think this team has, I don't know, maybe 6-7 players with over 20 points. So the production is insane. I think they're one of the best face-off teams in the country. I know Harrison Scott is one of the best face-off takers in the country. But yeah, I mean, they certainly have something to prove. When they get back to the Garden, I think they're going to come in with a little more hunger, a little more, they're going to be ferocious on the ice. We'll say it that way because they want to get to that championship round. They had a taste of it last year. And I think this is a team it's been a long time coming for them. I think Ben Barr has done an excellent job really getting them where they need to be. But the team, they have a ton of accountability with themselves. And, David Brazil, he's a great leader for this team and he keeps them strong in the D-core, up front, out back. I think they just have really strong voices that can lead them through a big moment like the semifinals here. And yeah, I think Northeastern is going to have quite the task ahead of them because they beat the number one team in the country, but they're going to face a team who feels like they have something more to prove. But yeah, I think Maine is going to be, an excellent team to watch. I think all year they started super strong. The second part of the season was a little more up and down, but I think their eyes have kind of been on the prize since day one, and this is part of it. So yeah, I think they're going to come in hungry. I think they're going to bring a ton of energy, whether it's from the fan base or the team. But yeah, Maine is going to be one of the tougher opponents to beat in this tournament, in my opinion, just because. I think people have kind of had their eye on them for quite a while. You like seeing the Boston schools there, but to see a team like Maine do what they've done and then to have something to prove, I think it's going to be just an extra layer of excitement for the fan base and people to watch.
Yeah, a couple of 20-point scores that you mentioned are on the back end for Maine. And, this is
Yeah.
a team that beat UMass Lowell 7-1 in their quarterfinal round matchup, the 2-1
Yep.
against Northeastern this year. Just talk about how well-rounded they are offensively, defensively, goaltending. And, it's great to see Maine back in it. And I know, over the last 10 years plus or so, we've talked about some teams emerging in Hockey East, like UMass Lowell, UMass, the UMass schools getting back into the mix and winning Hockey East tournament titles. Maine hasn't won since 2004,
Right.
and so they're back at Garden for the second straight year. And you talk about some, a new team to the mix relative to these other teams, and that's University of Connecticut, UConn. They've been in Hockey East for about a decade. They reached their first semifinal a couple of years back under Mike Cavanaugh. They're back at the Garden. You were there for their 3-1 win over Providence, which is great atmosphere. Just watching it on TV, I'm sure it was awesome to be in the building. But UConn has had themselves quite a year too.
Yeah, no, they certainly have. And that game was kind of interesting because Providence came out so strong. And I felt like this game, Providence versus UConn, was one of the more competitive ones to watch because, it was predetermined. These two teams knew that the spots they were battling for. And Providence came in like they were ready to get the job done. They were playing very quickly. They were taking time and space away from UConn. It kind of looked like they got UConn out of their game a little bit, but somehow UConn turned the Jets on in second period, third period. They just came out looking like the team that they have been. And they said, you know what, we're not going to let you take this in our building. And UConn has been a lot of fun to watch this year because you have players, of course, like Joey Muldowney and Jake Richard and Hutson Shandor. What a story that kid has. I mean, if there's someone who embodies the leadership and just the drive that this program has, it's Hutson Shandor. And, that whole first period, it kind of felt like a bit of a battle zone in a way because players were coming off the ice, holding a shoulder, holding an ankle, or checking out their leg to make sure they didn't have an injury. It was crazy how physical this game was and how much they were battling. But UConn plays a physical game, and I think they have added a ton of structure in their D zone. I think they brought in a couple of great players like Kai Janvaria, Trey Scott, Viking. He's a big kid back there. But no, I think UConn, they just look like the type of team that, said the past couple of years don't define us. What matters is right now. And, they've had their sights set on this opportunity for quite a while again. And Mike Cavanaugh and his coaching staff have, they kind of put the ideas on the table. But again, this is another team that has a ton of accountability. And just they look at each other and say, we're going to hold each other to this standard. We're going to hold each other accountable. And it was kind of a cool moment. Tyler Musialik was in that, obviously. But right before the third period, he goes out, he bends down, kind of puts his head down, gets in the mindset of the game. And John Spetz kind of went over his shoulder and just started kind of talking to him, borderline yelling to him, hey, big players are meant for big moments. You're that guy. Go out there, get the job done. And you could, of course, a couple of profanities in there as well. But John Spetz was just you know what? We believe in you, Tyler Musialik. Go out there and get it done. And I think that's what this team did. And that's the mindset that they're taking to the Garden.
Thank you for the chills. It's early in the week. We got 3-4 days until the games, but I love that. That shows a buy-in.
Yeah.
And I love you talk about the battle zone. Just if we look back on the Hockey East right now, the overall scope, pairwise is what these coaches use and the NCAA selection committee of how good you are. Because even if you lose, it's a quality opponent you face. Yes, BC's number 1 in pairwise. Maine is 3 as of right now. BU is 6. Connecticut is 7. And we talk about how up and down the year was for Northeastern. They're 22. Like, they did not have a successful year by any standards. You could ask anybody over at Northeastern and Matthews Arena, how's this year been? They've been like, it's a disappointment. But that's how good this conference has been. You were there for that UConn Prov game, and you speak about Shandor and Muldowney. Those were the guys that had the tying goal and the game-winning goal to go ahead, have a comeback in Toscano, and punch your ticket to TD Garden. When you look at this potential matchup that they have as well, what stands out to you, Natalie? Because this is going to be a UConn team facing a very good BU team too.
Yeah, I feel like UConn BU has been a game that I circle on my calendar throughout the past 2 seasons because it's not like, oh, these teams don't like each other, but it's the way that they play each other. They lay it all out there. And I think, last season in particular, it was one of the more entertaining games over in Storrs, Connecticut, because, the penalty boxes were just full of players defending each other and then getting called for penalties for it. They just go out there and they battle kind of a little more unlike other teams in Hockey East. For some reason, I don't know what it is. But UConn and Boston University, they like see each other and they see red. It's like, okay, we're going to do this. We're going to get the job done. And to see them at the Garden is going to be even more exciting because I feel like you've got BU, which is, a skilled finesse team with a ton of big names, big players. And then UConn, who's kind of emerged and have those big names, big players now. It's going to be a battle of, just getting that one additional goal over your opponent. I think this game is going to be really exciting to watch. Boston University, Jay Pandolfo, they're a great program, great team. I love watching them play. I love that this year in particular, they've kind of seemed a little more well-rounded, I guess. It's like they're not top heavy in any certain department, but they just kind of bring in, the pieces that they lost, they kind of replaced in a different way. And we were kind of joking, it's a great year to be named Cole in this league because, of course, you get Cole Eisenman, Cole Hutson. I think they're top 10 in the nation with goals per game. So you've got defenders who are contributing, like Sasha Boumedian and Tom Willander, and players, who are finding an offensive touch that, we're expected to, but, really making a difference in big moments. And then, George, I know Yegorov, how much of a difference maker he's been. I loved watching your interview with him after the Beanpot. Just the fact that he's just so he feels honored to be in the position he is. He said, I came in, I was a little nervous, but I'm here. I want to help my team win. And the fact that he keeps his team accountable, whether it's on the ice or in the classroom, he's a brilliant student. I think this team is a ton of fun to watch too. And I think the coaching staff are very excited to be playing one another at the Garden too. BU, UConn, it's going to be a fun game.
Yeah, made his debut against Boston College. I think he allowed a power play goal a few seconds into his debut. And it's just
there.
like, welcome to Hockey East, buddy. Then all of a sudden, just lights out from there. He's been huge for Boston University and may have changed the complexion of their season. Not to say that they were having a bad season by any means, but get you to the next level. Have a goaltender like that as you get ready for tournament time is huge. All right, so Natalie, we talked about the 4 teams. Obviously, Boston University, has sort of the, the star power, so to speak. Some of the other teams, maybe fans don't know as well, but you cover the teams, so you know them all very well. Who do you like in this tournament?
Oh boy, that's such a hard question.
I like to put you on the spot, I know. I sing your praises with how much you know the league and how much you know the teams, and then I put you on the spot.
Right. Well, this is where I'm like, okay, I hope I know what I'm talking about. No, I think I'm going to go with Maine this year. And you know what? I love all the teams, all the coaching staffs. I have great relationships. So hopefully not burning any bridges with this statement, but I think I might go with Maine. Just because I feel like they have that additional layer of let's get the job done. And they returned a lot of players from last year, so they've got that mentality too. I think those players are going to lead the charge. And the thing is, they've been on the stage. I know sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes the TD Garden can be a little overwhelming where it's like, okay, we're on a big stage. This is a highly sought after game to watch. A lot of eyes will be on us. But I think Maine, the importance for them will just to be stay in the moment, know what you did last year, and just take it a step further. But they certainly have what it takes to beat any team. I think any team that will be in the building has that ability, but I think Maine is just looking for that comeback and the statement. Kind of it's like they all talk about winning a championship, but I feel like the Hockey East Championship is one that you never forget in your lifetime, no matter how long you play hockey before or after. I feel like this is something that, really resonates with teams, and I think Maine is ready to get the job done. We'll see, though. People can call me out and say, Natalie, you were completely wrong. I wouldn't be surprised to see these teams in the
People would
championship.
never do that. People
No,
don't.
never. In a million
On
words.
social
In a million
media,
years. Yeah,
when you
even if
have a
Maine
take.
wins, they would totally not say you're wrong anyway. To be like, but I picked Maine. That would never happen.
Right. Well, what's going to happen is all my former UNH, I went to UNH, so obviously they're going to come after me and say, Natalie, what the heck? But no, we'll see what happens. I will say I have been tweeted at Xstat before that they're trying to invest in season tickets for me over at Toscano Family Ice Forum, because when I'm in the building, UConn tends to win. Not gonna hold that against anybody, but could be UConn. We'll see, guys.
You had some great fan bases too coming into TD Garden for the semifinal matchup. Talk about the environment of UConn. The ice bus is on its way up to Boston.
Yeah.
You got the doghouse. You got the fans from Maine, and then just down the street at Boston University. So that's going to be a great atmosphere as well. And shout out to your UNH Wildcats though. They had a couple of wins over UMass Lowell and able to sort of close out their season strong, obviously losing to Lowell again. But UNH will be a host site for the NCAA tournament in Manchester. So, UNH season continues in some way, shape, or form. We'll be talking about UNH a little bit, I guess.
Exactly.
Silver lining? I don't know.
Right. Yeah. No, I think UNH is a program that kind of molded me in my professional career, and
There you go.
and in turn, a lot of fondness for that place. So I try not to be too biased in my broadcast, but no, UNH is a great spot, and it's a team that thought that their season would be a little different than it turned out, but I think to the finish line, this team gave everything that they had, and they're very mature about the process. And the emergence of Rico DiMatteo towards the end. It's funny when fan bases get behind the goaltenders, because at Tsongas Center, Rico would make a save, and you'd hear the fans go Rico. So it was like, here's this kid who gets his third career start. He's only been in relief prior to that, but the fan base was already behind him. So no, you know what? Unfortunate year for the Wildcats, but they have a great young core with them who will carry them forward. And it's just been a really exciting year, up and down throughout the entire Hockey East, women and men's side. It's been great.
I wouldn't like anyone from UNH to say anything bad about Natalie, because she just sang the praises of UNH right there and mapped it out. Guys, it's a long-term build. Yeah. This doesn't happen overnight. It didn't happen overnight for Maine. BU.
Right.
22nd in pairwise to UNH.
We had to get some UNH talk for you. All right. That's you're nice enough to come on and weigh in on the semifinals, but being a UNH alum, we had to get a little.
I know
Durham
Brick
talk.
would appreciate that as well. So
he sure would. He sure would.
As well.
Natalie, great work as always. Really appreciate your insight. Great work covering Hockey East this year as well. Look forward to seeing you ringside for Boston Fleet games too.
Yeah. Thank you so much. That'll be a lot of fun. Going to St. Louis at the end of this month with the Fleet, and another game at Agana. So a lot of fun games to watch there. But yeah, college hockey has been great, and can't wait to see you guys cover the championships and the semis as well, as you always do.
All right, Natalie. Thanks very much. We'll see you soon as we talk Hockey Semifinal with Natalie Noury. Stream the entire Sox season with an NESN 360 annual plan, available at an all-new reduced price of just $20 a month paid annually. And for a limited time, get 4 free tickets to Fenway with your purchase. Visit NESN360.com to sign up today. And we're happy to be joined now by Eric Gallanty, play-by-play voice for Hockey East. Eric, thanks for joining us, man.
Thanks for having me. Looking forward to working with you guys this weekend, and for being on the show here. Looking forward to talk some college hockey.
Yeah, Eric will be on the call for the semifinal games at TD Garden. Condolences in advance for working with Billy Jaffe, but that's just the card you were dealt. So there you go. You got to work with Jeff. No, he's great. We always have a good time, and happy to have you on the broadcast, and happy to look ahead to some great games. And I got to tell you, I don't think people saw this coming. Maine, I think people saw that coming. But Northeastern beating Boston College. A huge upset. First number 9 seed to ever reach the semifinal. And Eric, I guess I'll just get your thoughts on Northeastern advancing to the semifinal, and if you could in any way see this coming.
Yeah, I mean, the crazy thing about this is, you guys were at the Bean Pot, right? And, Northeastern's been so good in the Bean Pot before, but it certainly was not the case this year. And so this isn't like one of those turnarounds where we say, okay, they were, didn't have a great start, but they've been coming recently. I mean, they got outscored 12-3 against UConn on March 1st. It's not that long ago in that 2-game series. So the fact that they've done this is kind of crazy. The one thing that probably in terms of the Boston College game is, of course, as you guys know, whenever there's a rivalry game, that kind of can change the calculus of things. And when you heard what Cameron Whitehead, the goalie, said after the game, when you heard what a couple of the other guys said, they took that Beanpot loss to BC really personally. 8-2 was the final score. So there was a lot of motivation there in terms of, they talked about it. It's a new season. They're 2-0 in the new season. And it starts with Cameron Whitehead, who you guys remember last year was really great at Beanpot. He won the Eberly Award. So it's not like he's never done this before, but still to have it's a .961 save percentage in 2 games in the Hockey East tournament is pretty crazy. So, shocking maybe isn't the right word. Certainly surprised based on where BC was and where Northeastern was this year. But there's a lot of pieces on this Northeastern team that have won these major games before. And that, kind of came through again on Saturday.
Yeah, I love that when you look at Northeastern and just how this roster is built out. You bring up Cam Whitehead, and in front of them are the guys like a Vinny Borghese, a Jake Boltman, who just transferred in, right, from Notre Dame. But then it's Jack Williams, Cam Lund, and you see especially getting the scoring from Cam Lund, and of course Connor as well, the freshman. So they're getting it from the top 6 players. But when it comes down to it, the team can be motivated. What is it about this Northeastern squad that plays on top of the puck, likes to forecheck, will play heavy, and has so deep down the middle a 200-foot game? But what made it work for them against BC that you could see it translating in a matchup with Maine where these two teams, I mean, that is going to be, not to embellish a little, it's going to be like a bloodbath watching them against the boards, which I look forward to.
Yeah, for sure. And that physical play certainly stood out. I think the thing that really stood out in that BC game was the block shots, right? They blocked 20 shots against BC. They have 47 block shots in 2 playoff games here. So they really committed to the structure. And that's where, like, you talk about the nature of the motivation that Northeastern had. It was how they committed to their game plan. And you really saw that. I mean, there were BC, I don't remember the exact numbers off the top of my head, but they had far more shot attempts, even ratio-wise, than shots on goal. Like, they just couldn't get, as much as they were kind of frantic in that third period and trying to come back, so many of their shots couldn't actually get through because of how well Northeastern was blocking shots. So that was the big thing that stood out. And then the second thing is, we talk about face-offs sometimes. I think sometimes it's a valid stat. Sometimes maybe it's a touch overrated, but Northeastern's really good on the face-off. Jack Williams, who you mentioned, takes a lot of them. Ryan McGuire takes a lot of them. And so with 27 seconds left in that game, BC got a late power play and had a chance 6-on-4, but Ryan McGuire won that face-off, and that may have actually been the biggest moment of the game. And that was a strength of Northeastern that they really relied on in that spot that, certainly can always show up. And then you talk about the main piece. Northeastern certainly has the experience winning in TD Garden, right? They've done it through the years. So that is a place that could potentially be an advantage for them as well.
All right. So you mentioned Maine. 2-0-1 against Northeastern this year. Ben Barr has this team in the semifinals again. It's been a lot of fun to sort of see Maine's reemergence in Hockey East under Barr, particularly the last couple of years. What stands out to you about the Black Bears? I know George had talked about some of their qualities, the quote, bloodbath that we could see on Thursday night at TD Garden.
Yeah, I don't want to, this is not going to sound like the most philosophical analysis. They're just good. Like, that's kind of what they are. The strength of their team is really how much depth they have. It really doesn't feel like one guy. You could talk about Alvin Boya. You could talk about some of their forwards up front, certainly. But they're just really solid. I mean, it's maybe been a little quiet this year, as crazy as that sounds with all the Boston schools. But they've only lost 2 games in regulation since January 3rd. Even in that game against Lowell, they had 7 goals. They had 13 guys with a point. 8 players had 2 points in that game. Their power play is really solid. They went through a weird stretch where they weren't scoring this year, but they just get a ton of pucks to the net. But some of those, advanced analytics, Corsi, game control, all of that stuff, Maine is top 5 in the country in almost every one of those categories. So they really control the game. The shots they allow are really from the outside, so they make it really difficult to get grade A chances. And when you do, they have one of the best goalies in the country in Albin Boya. So they're just a really solid team. And I think the thing about them is, Adam, you mentioned the fact it was great to see them at the Garden last year. They were not satisfied with that at all. They were incredibly disappointed that they didn't get beyond that. So this is very much now we're back to take care of our business that we didn't get to finish last year.
Yeah, I love that. When you watched them last year, they brought it to BU, and covering that championship game, you saw the aftermath of matching up with the main team, where on BU. And that definitely had a factor in the game of legs are heavier, just going against this main attack. It's wave after wave after wave. You talk about the depth. That's what jumps out to me. But Eric, in your eyes, what's the strength of this team? Because you see Makar and Scott combining for 33 goals, just alone goals between those two. I look at the blue line and their experience, they're old. And then the guys that Ben Barr will start on the ice, you could say aren't their best defenders, but I don't want to misspeak on Braziel and Charbier. Look, what do you think is the strength of this team? And you talk about Albin Boya too. So talking about all three parts of this squad, what to you makes Maine so good?
Yeah, it's that game control stuff, right? And that includes the blue line. You mentioned a couple of those guys. You can talk about Brandon Holt, who's really good defensively. You talk about Frank Jurasevich, who came in from Merrimack. That was a really key transfer. The other thing, Maine's just at college hockey age is a little different, right? Because sometimes you have young age teams, but they could be old experience. Maine's both. They really only play one freshman who plays significant minutes, Oscar Kalmaroff. Everybody else, you're talking about a lot of upperclassmen, a lot of guys who have been around, a bunch of guys who's even potentially transferred in. You mentioned Makar, Jurasevich. There's a couple others. Harrison Scott started his career elsewhere. So there's a lot of that. It's a veteran, it's an experienced team. They understand what Ben Barr's trying to do with them structurally. They understand how to push people to the outside. So it's going to be very difficult for Northeastern, especially because they rely upon their top line so much to get the grade A chances that they want to in front of Albin Boya.
Yeah, Frank Jurasevich, who you mentioned, first Maine defender in over a decade to reach the 25-point mark, which is pretty impressive. All right, so that's the Maine Northeastern matchup. Boston University UConn is actually the earlier game. BU in a battle with UMass, a 3-2 overtime win, so they were able to get back to the semifinal. Looking to win it for the first time since 23, so it hasn't been that long, but looking for their 11th Hockey East tournament title. We saw BU, you mentioned the Bean Pot with Boston College and thrashing Northeastern. They end up losing to BU, and I really remember watching that game and saying, man, this is all BC. BC's going to run away with it, and then all of a sudden BU just turned on the Jets. What stands out to you about the Terriers?
Yeah, I think there's a couple things with this BU team. Number one, you guys saw it at Beanpot, right? You kind of have to start with Mike Yegorov, who totally changed the course of this BU team. He's been outstanding in goal. I think most folks know the story. If they don't, he was in the USHL. He was committed to BU, but not supposed to come until next season. But he ends up coming in early. He ends up starting a game at Boston College on the road, and he's basically been the starter ever since the middle of January. But it's almost less about him and more what he's done to help BU's defense. And we naturally talk offense with BU so much, but since Yegorov started playing, which is January 25th, BU's only allowed 27 goals, and that's over 13 games. And you could even, if you want to go deeper on that stat, of those 27 goals, 11 of them came in 2 games. They've allowed 2 goals or less in 11 of their last 13. So they've just found a way to be really good defensively to then go along with all the offensive firepower that they have. And that's really been the biggest thing with this BU team in the second half of the season compared to some of the inconsistencies we saw in the first half.
Yeah, and how did you see that uptick from Yegorov? I mean, his first game in, he gets dropped into Conti form. Everyone knows how difficult that is to play. Everyone knows the storyline. And then you just saw a different BU team in the Bean Pot. From your eyes, Eric, what have you seen change about this team where it's gone from Yegorov being that guy that starts 3 games to now, once he got to BU, once he arrived on campus, once he got submitted into spring semester, he's been their goalie with a .937 save percentage. Everything in front of him, you talk about the defense, how has that been benefiting the front line too, the 3 guys on top of the ice for them?
Yeah, I think it's just, confidence in what they have on the back end, right? I mean, they're trusting what they have. And I think the other piece too, which this is probably less about Yegorov, is BU was extremely young defensively early in the season. A lot of sophomores, a lot of freshmen. So there was that natural sort of growing up period as the year went on as well. But he's just been so solid back there. And I think the other thing is he just brings a personality, it feels like. He's jumping against the glass at Aganis, and you talk to him after the game at the Beanpot, and it's like doesn't have a care in the world about how big a deal this is. He's just a great sort of personality to bring in as well. It's worth noting he was a 2nd-round pick of the Devils, so it's not completely shocking that he's been as good as he's been, even though the circumstances around it obviously were somewhat unique. But he's just brought this totally different element to this team.
In terms of the UConn, by the way, the tournament's gone to the Dogs and the Black Bear, right? So you have the Terriers and the Huskies going head to head. But UConn with a 3-1 win over Providence to advance to the semifinal game. And, second time that Mike Cavanaugh has taken the UConn Huskies to the semifinal. Obviously, they're the young guns, I guess you could say, of Hockey East, right? Because they've only been in Hockey East for about a decade or so. You called the UConn win over Providence. I want to ask you first, not necessarily looking ahead of the matchup against BU, but just the environment at the Ice Forum. It seemed really loud watching it on TV. What was it like in that building?
Yeah, it's a great building. It's not the biggest capacity-wise, but I think that actually helps because it's full basically every night. It worked out. Sometimes you have to get lucky in these Hockey East playoffs because it's right around spring break for a lot of the schools. Yeah. But the UConn kids were there still, so that made a huge difference. It was a great environment in a game that they were down and had to come back against, and they certainly did. It's been a pretty special year in UConn, and there's a lot of really, really great storylines with this team. We talk about a lot of them, but they get the job done in a major way. But it was just, fantastic crowd, fantastic environment.
What do you see that Muldowney and Shander bring to this UConn attack? Because Muldowney's a leading goal scorer, Shander's a leading with assists, and you see both of those guys be big-time players on the goals they needed for the comeback win against Prov at home.
Yeah, can we talk about the Shandor thing? So I want to make sure people understand what he did in that game. So he got hurt relatively early on in that game, went down the tunnel, did not play the rest of the first period. Second period, he's out there in between, during TV timeouts, he's kind of skating on the ice, trying to test his, see if he can skate. He goes out for one shift, his first shift in the second period, scores, and then that was it the rest of the game. He didn't play the rest of the game. So, talk about not to be dramatic, but it was almost like it was like a Kirk Gibson type moment. It was really crazy. And, but he's one of the captains. And this is something that, we'll talk about this week as we're preparing the storylines for this game. Mike Cavanaugh has been really consistent that the biggest turning point of their season was in June when John Spetz and Hutson Shandor decided to come back. They're so important as veterans. UConn lost a couple of guys to the transfer portal, NHL draft picks to the transfer portal, their top couple of scorers from last year. But Spetz and Shandor coming back kind of put this wanting to prove the world wrong kind of thing on this UConn team that they've really carried all the way through. You mentioned the Muldowney piece. It's really the jumps, right? Just so I have the numbers right. So Muldowney's up 28 points from last year. Shandor's up 19 points from last year. Jake Richard's up 20 points from last year. Ryan Tattle's up 18 points from. These are crazy numbers year over year. So those are the guys that have stepped up in a massive way. Another kind of veteran team that goes along with a really good freshman class that stepped up in some key moments.
And how about the goaltending for UConn? You got the transfer from UNH, Tyler Muslik. How big has he been for this squad?
Yeah, that might be the best story of all of them. So Tyler Muslik is a national team development program goalie. So he was, had some bona fides coming into college. Went to UNH, was just kind of never really got the opportunity because he got hurt that second year, sort of lost the net to Jakob Helston, to whose credit was really good. It wasn't like that was, a crazy choice. So then Music tries to find a new spot and didn't necessarily really have the success in college to go off of. You're going off of past stuff with him, but he's come in. Then he got hurt again this year and missed a little bit of time. But he's come back and he's just been a really solid goalie. Callum Tongue was an all Hockey East rookie team selection. He was hurt at the beginning of this season. He's come in. They've basically split time ever since, kind of the beginning of December. And Mike Cavanaugh has said, I'm not overthinking it, right? It was Music's turn, so he's going to go. I don't know what we're going to see on Thursday, but I wouldn't be surprised if it goes the other way. So that's kind of what he's been in goal this year. Both guys have been really, really solid. Music was great down the stretch of that game. He was great in the Connecticut Ice Tournament. And that's another one for UConn. I know that folks maybe in this area maybe aren't as quite aware of it as Beanpot. The Connecticut 4 schools have started playing a Beanpot-like tournament the last 4 or 5 years. And UConn had never won that. And I know it was weighing on them. And to get the monkey off their back and get a trophy winning that, I think was a big deal for this team, that if they're raising the trophy on Friday, we might be looking back at.
I love that. So if you say if they raise that trophy, they can look back on that tournament and the momentum boost they get. Of course, BU won the Beanpot. Northeastern knows how to win tournaments. And this is Maine's second straight trip to being in the Final Four for the Hockey East tournament. We talked about the goalies. We talked about the studs on each team. Eric, in your eyes, who's the X factor in the tournament? I know it's that cliche question, but who do you see being a player that could step up and the team that can win, and this guy will be the why?
I guess the X factor of the Beanpot's Yegorov, right? And that totally changes the course of that tournament. It's probably easy to say the goalies, but I'll do it for each game, I guess. The first game, I guess it's probably Cam Whitehead, right? I mean, if he's going to keep playing like this, he's as good as any goalie in this tournament. It's a tougher matchup against Maine, but if he can keep playing like this, that's a real one. And then I think in the second game, maybe more than even one guy, it's probably the power plays, just because both power plays are so good. UConn has a power play goal in 16 of their 18 games in the second half. BU's power play's been elite, and usually when they score one, they score two. But as you guys know, in the playoffs, sometimes there's not as many penalties called in a normal game. So does the power play have a chance to be a factor? That could be really huge. The other guy, of course, that maybe we haven't touched on is Cole Hutson for Boston University, who is, just had the year that his brother had a couple of years ago as a freshman. His brother Quinn, who's still there, is second nationally in points per game. But Cole Hutson can kind of do some of those things for BU that Lane Hutson did, that we saw why he's gone on to the NHL and had the success that he's had. So that's probably a name to watch for BU. It'll be interesting to see the start of that game early because, UConn in a new building for them, first time in a while since 22. A lot of new pieces since then. So how do they handle it against a BU team that's obviously been there? But in that second game, I think it's clearly Whitehead.
All right, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you this question before we let you go and wrap things up on the Hockey Hub. Boston College, number 1 team in the country. They lose in the Beanpot. Then they lose in the quarterfinal round of the Hockey East tournament. They're stacked. They're goaltend, top to bottom. Any concern about BC because of the fact they lose in that Beanpot final? They lose in this quarterfinal round, Chep. Any concern going into the NCAA tournament?
This is probably not going to be as hot takey as it could be, but I thought they played fine for a lot of that game. There was about 8 minutes at the end of the second period against Northeastern where they didn't have a shot on goal. Northeastern played really well. They got 2 goals out of that. The rest of it, though, BC outshot them pretty good. Fowler allowed 2 goals. Yeah, it wasn't probably a great rebound on the first one, but Fowler's has better numbers than almost any full-time starter in Hockey East history, so it's probably not fair to go there, right? Put that on him. Leonard had, I think it was 18 shot attempts and 9 shots on goal, so it wasn't for lack of chances. I thought that the BU Beanpot game and the Northeastern game were similar in the fact of how many block shots there were, how good Northeastern was at sticking to their structure. But again, you still got to have a great goalie. And so, sure, obviously it's not a game that Boston College wanted to lose. But I don't think, outside of maybe 7 or 8 minutes, they played badly by any means. And I think, if anything, this will just motivate them going forward.
All right. We'll talk about Boston College a lot more as we get closer to the NCAA tournament. Eric Gallanty, really appreciate your time, and make sure to catch the Men's Hockey East Tournament semifinals Thursday on NESN Plus, featuring Maine, Northeastern, and Boston University UConn. Coverage begins Thursday at 4 on NESN Plus and NESN 360. And on Friday, check out the Men's Hockey East Championship game. That's at 7:30 on NESN Plus and NESN 360. Looking forward to hearing you on the call with Billy Jaffe, Eric. Again, thanks for your time, man.
Thanks for having me, guys. Looking forward to this week. Appreciate it.
All right, that'll wrap things up on the Hockey Hub podcast. George, great work as always. Always a
Adam.
lot of fun talking hockey and Hockey East. And we'll see you ringside on Thursday for the matchup, my man.
I can't wait. The Garden's going to be absolutely popping. I can't wait to work with Eric, too. And Billy's always going to bring it as well. This is going to be such a phenomenal tournament. The clashes of styles of hockey, it just can be the beauty of it. Such a good league we saw all year long. This tournament's going to be so tough.
All right, we'll see you Thursday for Hockey semifinal action. But before that, our next episode of Hockey Hub will drop on Thursday as well. We'll see you then.